In the previous episode of Costanoa County, we finally got a rein on our garbage management, and that was done by adding this recycling center right here, as well as expanding the landfill over here just a little bit. Ultimately, it was the recycling center that did most of the work, but it's good to know that at this point we do have enough processing speed to alleviate some of the pressure on some of our service facilities like this small coal power plant, which is now running at 100% efficiency. We also did a little bit of upzoning in this area right here. And that's because there was an additional bus route that I added that goes along this route here, and it created two additional junctions or nodes where transit intersects with each other. And because of those nodes, I just wanted to add a little bit of density around there. In this episode, what I want to do is I want to take a look at one of these farm plots here and do a little bit of redevelopment there. And there's a specific asset that I have in mind that I want to place there, and it's going to be helpful to have that additional land. And because we're taking out some farmland, I also want to buy some additional tiles to replace some of the farmland. And I think where I might do that is probably somewhere along where Market Street will continue on, which is going to be in this area and possibly over here, in the hopes that maybe I can connect up with the garbage facility here and kind of create one larger city that encapsulates this as well. The very first thing that I'll need to do though is I'm going to need to accrue some additional money, and I'm making quite a bit now. I also have a few loans still outstanding, and I mentioned that I wanted to pay those off before this episode. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to look at what we have now with the city, and specifically these garbage piling up symbols. I want to see if those are going to dissipate while I'm simulating, and I wanted to at least show you what the before and after are going to look like after I've simulated for quite a bit. And the main things I want to look at are how much time has passed. So we're in November right now of 2026. And then how much population we have, as well as how much money we have. And then a couple other things, like I hope that this happiness is still sitting at about the same amount. But yeah, I want to kind of see the effects of simulating for that long. If my population will continue increasing, I think that might plateau at some point. It might already be happening right now. And I want to see if I can keep a stable amount of money here. So we're at 10,734, about 10,800. So yeah, I just want to see the effects of the simulation and bring you along for that ride. All right, and I'm back and I have the game paused, and there's a reason for that. So I actually did a lot of the simulating and a little bit of the building as well for this episode, but I tend to record these episodes in multiple day increments. And one of the things that happened this morning is that the game was updated, and I won't go into detail into everything that was updated, but one of the things that you'll notice is that the current trend for the population is super high. And that's because the homeless population is now being counted in my overall population. So the homelessness bug that has been plaguing the game for a while is hopefully fixed once and for all now, but there are some ephemeral issues that are coming out of that. So because I did a lot of the work before this update, I do have the numbers for how all of these things changed, and I'll cut to that now and kind of give you a quick review of that. The monthly balance is about the same as when I started. I did a little bit of rebalancing of the taxes, but we're still hovering around that like 280 to 290 area. And then the amount of time it took me to get to that 1 million was about 4 months, which makes sense because yeah, to get, multiply this by 4, you get about 1 million. And as for the population, it didn't actually ever fully plateau. Like it slowed down a little bit, but it was pretty steadily increasing. And I guess that makes sense because I added a whole lot of housing over in this area and then didn't really simulate for that long after that. So it's probably just a product of people moving into these homes over here. For now though, there is one thing I want to do to address the fixing of the homelessness bug, and that's going to be to make a bus route that goes out of the city, and I'll make that bus route free. And I'll probably simulate just a little bit more so that some of the homeless population that wants to leave the city can do that. And then I should also have as a side effect a little bit extra money too. What this means too though is that I unfortunately lost a lot of the work that I did yesterday, which included putting in some buildings here and then also taking out some of the farmland over in this area. Ultimately, I think that's okay because there are some things that were included in the update, and I'll go over those as well, that I want to use in one of these builds. So fortunately, I can improve on what I built, and having already built it, hopefully that helps as well. So the bus route that's going to go out of the city is going to be pretty simple. It's just going to stop at the two nodes that I have at these two intersections and go straight out, and it'll be free so that the people who want to leave the city can do that. And this is a temporary bus line, so I'm just going to name it as such, temp, and then make it free. One more thing that I'm going to do while I'm simulating out is I'm just going to actually bump down, or really what I'll do is I'll just turn off these other transit lines for now so that I can focus everything on getting the people out of the city that would like to leave. And just while I was simulating, there was another thing that I wanted to make sure I got done, which is to pay off these loans. I did that in the previous recording, but I want to make sure that I remember to do that right now. And ultimately, it's not going to change our monthly balance too much. It's only $5,900 per month that this is costing us, and our surplus is already at $270. But at this point, I think any boost is welcome. And I wanted to hop in and give a quick tip on how to expedite the process of getting the cims out of the city that would like to leave as a result of this new update. So originally what I had done is I took the temporary route that I made and put every single bus I had on there, and realized that the process was going kind of slow. So what I did is I actually reactivated these other 3 bus lines in my system. I made them all free, as well as the temporary bus line, so that people would be able to more easily get to the 2 stops that I have in the center of my city. And hopefully that allows the cims to more quickly get to their destination, which for a lot of them, I think is just leaving the city over here. And I think now I've gotten things to a point where I'm comfortable to stop simulating, and these bus stops are not piling up as much as they were. So there's one thing that I want to do while things are kind of in a lull right now is to replace the bus depot and then add a little bit of high density, low income housing in the downtown core here. So first things first, the bus depot, the reason I'm replacing that is because as part of the update, the service buildings that have vehicles can now have those vehicles spawn in at the parking spaces in that service building. So for the bus depot in particular, that's going to be a big change because there's just a lot of buses. And I think it'll look a bit nicer in the city to have a bus depot that actually has buses in it. So I'll start with that. And that, if you'll remember, is over in this area right here. So I'll replace this, and you'll notice that these parking stalls here will be full. And there they are. All these buses are now waiting here, and they should start coming out. Yeah, there they go. So these buses are now going to start filing out of this bus depot here. And unfortunately, I think we might lose a lot of what the buses are doing now on our lines. Take a look. Yeah, all those buses, I think they just disappeared. But these stops are not piling up so much yet. So I think that was a good time to get that done, just get it out of the way. The other thing that I'm noticing is that if I look over here at this tennis court, for some reason, something here is not connected. And I believe it's probably the tennis court itself, for whatever reason, is not connected. So I'm going to try to just nudge it a little bit. And it wasn't the end of the world, but I did have to change the orientation of this tennis court because I think what was happening is that this road right here, which has a bus stop on it, was just not playing well with the pedestrian access. So I just flipped it around. I had to add this alley and I had to move this parking lot, which wasn't my ideal. I wanted to put it right here, but it just barely didn't fit. But I think in the end, this is fine, and it's a very small park area, so it shouldn't be much of an issue. A quick check back in at the bus depot, and you can see that there's still a few buses left here, so that's about how many I'll have left over. And then once I get rid of that temporary line, there'll be, I guess, 8 more buses in here, so it'll look a little bit filled out. Of course, if you're using all the buses, it won't have any of those in there, unless I assume they're like being maintained or something. But it is nice to have at least some sort of visual cue in here now. And I mentioned the low rent housing. So the place I want to put that is just right here where this Ordinateur store is, which is another electronics store. And I took a look at these ones. This is electronics, this is electronics, and this is electronics. So there's a lot of electronics stores right here for some reason. But to me, that says like, we don't really need this one right here. So what I want to do is place at least one low rent house in here. And if I take a look at our zoning tab, you can see that a lot of the icons have changed here. And I think that's pretty nice. It gives them a little bit more distinction. I might just think that it's nice because it's different, but I don't know. I still think it looks pretty nice. The type of low rent housing I want to do is just the regular low rent housing that came with the base game. And the reason I want that is it'll give, I think, a little bit taller buildings. And I think this area specifically could use a taller building like that. So let me get rid of the zoning here, delete that building. And I'll pop over to the low rent housing. And I think I want to have just maybe one right there. We'll see what pops in. And then I want to put a medium density building. I kind of want to try out one of the new Japanese medium density housing, and we'll see what that looks like. All right, and both of those buildings have spawned in, and for one, I actually really like this low rent housing building, and for some reason it looks completely different than anything I've seen coming out of that low rent housing zoning style. So I'm not exactly sure if that's something new that I'm not aware of, or if it's just something that I've never seen placed down, because with low rent housing, before the French low rent housing was added to the game, I never really spent much time like making a dedicated build to it, so I didn't really care about what was spawning in. But I think this one looks pretty nice, fits in with the size and scale of this area that's surrounding it. The Japanese asset, I think, is a little bit funky, but in the end, I think it kind of makes sense. Like, for redeveloping this area, maybe, you know, having one medium density house that's kind of just pops in the back here is what you might see. Once it levels up, I'm wondering it might like scale up a little bit. So I want to just leave it and we'll see what happens when it starts leveling. And with all that out of the way, I think I can get back to the goal of this episode, which was to add one of the signature buildings, as well as a high school in this area, and then expanding into some of this farmland over here. Where I'll start is over here. I'm going to start with a signature building that I'm going to place because it's larger than the high school that I want to place. The signature building is the Morrissey Supermarket, and you can kind of get a sense of the scale right here. It's going to end up facing this way about, or rather, I think it's actually maybe this way is a little bit better. So yeah, that's the orientation right there. It's a very large asset, but the school that I want to place is the German high school, and that's much smaller, so we can still kind of tuck that back in here. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to clear out all these trees and do any grading that I need to do beforehand. Clearing out the trees will just allow me to see better what's going on here, and then I can replace them later on to blend them into the surrounding area. Another quick thing, part of the update, they changed the icons here, but also added in a line tool. And this is kind of one of the reasons that I try to play vanilla as much as I can, because there is a line tool mod, but inevitably, I think especially with City Skylines 2, the dev team is trying to add in as many of the most useful mods as possible. And I really like to have access to like native functionality over mods. The other advantage, I think, is that I don't get used to using a tool that is ultimately going to be deprecated. And I'll also get like a little bit more crafty with how I use the tools that exist in the vanilla game. But with that out of the way, I will continue and go ahead and clear all these trees. All right, and I went a little bit back and forth about how I wanted to set up the circulation pattern here. I decided to add this other connection in here just because it was so close to this intersection right here. I felt like it made sense to just add it in. And then over here, I added one of the new roundabouts. Yeah, this is one of the new roundabouts. So there are, with the update, a bunch of new roundabouts. There's like these patterned ones, and then I think, yeah, this one was the one with bushes in it. So check those out. There's a lot of them in there, and they kind of span throughout all the different sizes as well. There's also cul-de-sacs. That's probably something for a later time. And with the roadway layout that I have now, I have a couple of empty spaces right here. So there's like these two right here that are pretty big. There's also this one over here, which I think I probably will leave empty for the moment, or possibly place down some paths and maybe a small park. But I want to make sure that I have like good sight lines everywhere. So if you're on Belmont Street, you can see that this supermarket is right here. The same goes for Cozy Street. Like if you're right here at this intersection, you should be able to see this supermarket right here and have good visibility of it. This area, I think, is a little bit too far from the supermarket to justify having the sightlines in there. I'd rather have just a little bit of other like commercial in here. And there's a couple things that I'd like to do there. One of them is probably place down one of these pubs that came with the UK asset pack. And it's gonna have to be one of like these standalone pubs here. I think probably the smallest one. The other thing I do want to add are one of these petrol stations, and I think I can get away with this large one here. So I think I want to add that maybe on this side here as you go in and out. And let me just double check how that looks at the ground level with the grading, because there is some kind of crazy grading right there. It's definitely not great. Definitely not what I would want, actually. So I'm gonna flip that a little bit. And maybe what I'll do is I'll actually put it over here on this corner. And I think that makes a lot more sense, just because it's now on Belmont Street, which is a busy street. You'll see gas stations like this often as a part of a larger complex with a supermarket. Sometimes if you're in the US, you'll see that at Costco's. So it's a very common thing to have a gas station placed around a supermarket. If I zoom in here, I just kind of want to see what it looks like at the ground level. Yeah, I think that's about what I was going for. It doesn't obstruct too much of the supermarket, especially if you're coming up here, you can still see over. And then over on this side as well, you should still be able to, yeah, you can still see that way. This is a hill coming up here, so it's not something I'm gonna have to worry too much about, but I like to keep that in mind just because I think it's a realistic thing to consider. And then for the pub, I mentioned wanting to place probably this one. Let me take a look at all of them. Yeah, I'd like to place this pub here, the smaller one. And the reason I want to place the smaller one is I can actually add a little bit of parking to it as well. All right, man, I went a bit back and forth on what I wanted to do there. I initially had the angled parking in place here, but I realized there's parking back here, and I think that's probably sufficient for a pub of this size. And people can always park nearby in the neighborhood here if they really are running out of parking in this area. I don't think it's strictly necessary. There's also the supermarket parking nearby that could be used for overflow purposes. And as I was looking at this, again, I'm kind of just going back on what I said, but it's only a small amount of parking, so I don't think it's actually that unjustified to have some additional parking here, and I'll butt it straight up against the road there just to give us a little bit more space for detailing back here. But yeah, so this could be like the patron parking, and then back here could be employee parking. And the rest of the detailing in this area, I actually want to leave for after I place the high school right here, and I'll do the entire detailing of this area all at once. Over here though, I think I'm just going to have a little bit of a pond. I can't actually make it a pond because I don't have any of the mods to add ponds, but I'll just kind of put a divot here and detail a little bit, and in the future, maybe that's something that'll be added in the game. I don't want to fuss over mods at the moment. Right here, I think I'm just going to detail and put a park. All right, and then over here, I'm going to put that high school. And this is where I mentioned some of those roads would be useful. So I initially wanted to do a one-way circulation through this area and kind of make it like a big cul-de-sac. But I wasn't really able to do that because I didn't want to use these like giant one-way roads around here. But now we do have one-way alleys. So that's really helpful in making the area look the way that I want it to. What I'll do once again though is I'm going to place down the high school first so I can kind of determine where exactly I want it to go. And then I will place in the roads afterwards. And somewhat surprising, that was kind of a pain, but I got the end result I was looking for, which was this loop that comes back out at this junction. And with that in there, I think it's time to detail up this area. What I'll do is I'll add in some parking spaces for teachers and students here at the high school, and then kind of connect it back in with this forest back here that I got rid of. And that's where I want to leave things with the detailing. I was able to do a lot more than I was when I did this before the update. Certain things like these additional pocket parks that are now in the game that came with this update, that made detailing this particular area a lot easier. If I take a look at it, if I zoom in, kind of see what's going on here. Yeah, there's a little kiosk and some places to sit, and that is essentially what I had done in the previous build that I made, but I made it with props. This one's a lot nicer because it's an actual park, so it will function and draw people in. And I wanted to get down to street level as well, so you kind of see what I was going for. There is still clear sightlines to this Morrissey's from this street here, and let me give you a quick look at where exactly that is. So that's here, Green Street. You can see clearly over to the store, which is what I was looking for, and really this whole street right here has a good sightline all the way down, which I think now that I'm looking at it looks really cool, also with the school in the background. The same is going to apply at this intersection here. If I zoom in, we get down to like about the street level, you can clearly see the Morrissey's over here. That's why I use these palm trees right here, is because they're so tall and their leaves are all the way up here that if you're at the ground level, you can still see things on the other side. And in this area, I tried to keep it fairly light with detailing and use as many bushes as possible. The bushes that come with the vanilla game are sometimes quite large, like this one's pretty huge. And in fact, I actually will just delete that to clear things up a little bit. What I wish I did have for this specific area, actually where the retention pond is I wish I had like some tall grasses to line this area with. I did my best with the vanilla bushes and adding in some sand. Of course, this would look a lot better with water in it, but I'm just trying to get like some sort of visual interest. If you come out like here, you can kind of see what I'm going for maybe, but yeah, I just wanted it to be a little bit different than what I would normally do with an area like that, which is probably just some sparse landscaping. Overall though, I'm very happy with how this space turned out. And I like how it's kind of the right size for this area. Like this building's very large, but it's not very vertically large. So it tends to blend in with this area quite well. But now that that is done, I want to turn my attention over to this farm area over here. So if we zoom over there, there are two places that I want to kind of take out some farmland and add in another neighborhood. One of those places is just going to be along Crest Street here. I'd like to continue that on all the way through to here, and then take out the farm on this side, just so that Market Street here can be more complete. And then this farm here, I don't really like the way that it looks with all of these sub buildings. And if we take a look, it is a vegetable farm. So I guess those vegetables farms will tend to have some of those sub buildings with them. I'm also noticing that my demand for commercial is really low. So I probably won't be able to finish these areas today just because I want to put commercial along Market Street. But I probably will be able to put in maybe some larger, higher density homes, especially like on these corners here. So I will go ahead and get started with removing these farms and then adding in a roadway network. And in this area here, I want to make sure I add in at least one elementary school, just because we're a little bit low specifically on the elementary. Yeah, you can see we're short by about 1,000. So I want to place in one of these UK suburban primary schools because it has that 1,000 capacity, and then with a couple of the extensions, we should be able to exceed the capacity that we need. And with placing that, we did also get small city. Having that extra 250,000 will be nice. It should be enough headroom now to actually get all the things done that I wanted to today. And for the rest of this area here, I want to place down some of the new Japanese assets. In San Francisco and in many large cities, you'll see small neighborhoods that have a specific cultural identity. That might look like something like Chinatown in New York. There's also a Chinatown in San Francisco. We also have a Japantown here in San Francisco and North Beach, which has strong Italian influence. Right here, though, I will be sticking with the Japanese themed assets, so it'll be kind of our own little small Japantown. And I'll pop up a picture here now too of the Peace Plaza in Japantown. I won't be doing anything quite like that here, but I did want to just add a park in this area to give it a little bit more of a unique feel. And as I was placing the commercial over here, I was realizing that everything was zoning in kind of like these weird shapes, and I couldn't get things to zone in all the way back. And I started clicking on these and realized that every single one of them is lodging. So what's happening here is that the demand for lodging is the only commercial demand that's high because the rest of my city does not have any lodging. And that's because there was an update a couple weeks ago that introduced lodging, or at least it fixed it. So nothing new spawned in, and I haven't really been zoning just regular old commercial. So that's what's happening here. And I think the way that I want to fix this is to first, I'm going to pause it and I'm going to remove all this zoning right here and delete all these buildings because I don't want all of this to be lodging right here. Like, it's fine if one or two is, but not the entire thing. And what I'll do is I'll go to other places in the city and I will place lodging down there instead. And I'll try to target some areas that have like parks nearby or that are in particularly nice areas, because I think that's like lodging is basically based on attractiveness, and I think parks and things like that help with that. So I've gone around and I've done it a few places, and what I'm noticing is that nothing's actually spawning in. And part of that makes sense because there's no commercial demand, but I would expect that once I deleted those other ones that something else would spawn in. So I'm just going to leave them, and then what I'll do is I'll focus on the next part of the build, which is going to be expanding the farms. So if I take a look at the farming area that we have now, I took out some farms right here and then this one right here as well. Where I want to extend to is, if I follow along Market Street, I want to extend out this way and potentially over in this area. And the other place that I mentioned, if I zoom out, is over here to connect up with the garbage facility in this area. I know for a fact that these two tiles right here are going to be a little bit cheaper because there's water there, and because there's not as much land, that means that the value of the tile is going to be a little bit less. Because I simulated a bit more earlier, I should be able to buy all the tiles I want. Over here is where the land is going to be particularly expensive, and that's the land that I do want the most because of its proximity to Market Street. So I'm going to kind of see how much I can buy, and then I'll go from there and probably place down a few farms with it as well. All right, and I selected actually all the map tiles that I was interested in buying, and it looks like we have plenty of room to spare in terms of cost. The total cost is being 464 and we have 820,000. The one thing I want to consider is that we only have a monthly balance of 150,000, and the cost of all those tiles that I just selected is going to be 98,000 per month. So that's going to bring us down to, yeah, about 50,000 per month. I think that's okay for now. Once we get those farms in, it should increase our revenue just a little bit. It also will give us a lot of space to expand into for the future. And right now, the place that I want to start actually is to incorporate some of the land that I've already been using, and that's specifically this garbage facility right here. I want to incorporate that into the city officially with the district tool. So what I'll do is I'll just expand, and I'm only going to take stuff on this one side of the highway and as well as the coastline here. Just because I don't think I'll use the other side of the highway for now, so I'll just keep it simple. All right, and I decided to just bring things all the way out to the edge here, and then also decided to follow this little like lagoon area right here, this stream. Just because I felt like, yeah, it makes sense to follow the natural boundary for now. I don't think the city will cross that anytime soon. Over here, the garbage facility, this kind of like a leg right here is reminiscent of what I've seen in Denver, Colorado with the international airport right there. The airport is actually like very far from the core of Denver and even pretty far from the outskirts of Denver, but it's incorporated into the city itself using a similar tactic as this, where it follows the freeway that leads to the airport out of Denver, and all the land adjacent to that freeway is incorporated into Denver itself. The next thing I want to do is I want to start sending Market Street up this way. And I also want to start sending it out over here. And what I'll do is kind of like right in this area where we can see the contour lines are starting to come closer together. That's the area where I'll start turning it in, and I'll kind of follow into this flat area over here. So I took a quick look at Google Maps to see how the streets in San Francisco turn in this area, and specifically like what the radii look like on the curves. And Market Street itself doesn't make this curve. There are adjacent streets that do. The largest radius of those is seemingly a bit bigger than this one. So what I want to do is just make that a little bit more smooth of a transition there. So I'll just back that off a little bit and fix that. Yeah, and I like how that looks a little bit better. I think it looks more natural than it did before. Before, it was a little bit too sharp of an angle for what I would like to see. And over here then, what I want to do is I basically want to take this street right here, which is called Sunset Street, And I'm going to bring it all the way straight into market over here. And I'm taking a look at the grading now just to make sure that's feasible. And it actually looks like it's very much so conducive to that style of road, just going straight through here. And then once it gets to market, I may consider curving it in and hitting Market Street at a 90-degree angle. And I wasn't exactly sure how I wanted to handle this junction right here. I thought about just leaving it like this because I think the natural progression of this street right here is actually going to be kind of to follow that angle and go up this hill possibly. However, I think it just makes more sense to have it come in at a 90, and there's so much space out here. I don't see a reason why I wouldn't do that, just because it's like a safer junction from a traffic perspective. Over in this area, what I want to do is continue out this very large grid with the same unit length on the width and the height of this block. And I'll continue it out this way. And I think what I'll do is just fill it out with some basic farms based on the demand that we have for certain farming produce. And I will leave things there for now in this farming area. I added, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 farms here, and then I expanded this one right here. And if you look at the production chain, we are definitely sufficient in all of those now, and even exporting for all of them, which is good. I wanted to check back in on the lodging buildings that I placed down. So it looks like we did get, I think, 1, 2, 3, and 4 hotels in now. So they did end up spawning in. I think I'm gonna have to probably redevelop a little bit more of those going forward, or otherwise increase my commercial demand before I'm actually able to add in commercial into this new development over here, as well as over here in our little Japantown. The other thing I just wanted to check back in on is the buses. And if you'll remember, we added in this temp bus, which was meant to take people out of the city, and it looks like it is still getting some usage. So for now, I am just going to leave it in there. But what I will do is I'm going to set the prices back up for my other public transit lines to $2, which I think they should still be at the free price right now. Yeah. So I'll crank these back up to 2. And it looks like we're still not getting as much utilization as I would like out of these. So that may be something I have to look into in the future as well. But for now, that is going to be it for this episode. As a quick recap of what we got done today, the major project was over here where we added in a German high school, as well as this Morrissey supermarket and some other smaller unique buildings right here. The other area that I focused on was over in this area by the farms. I took out a few farms and added in a Japanese themed neighborhood with a small suburban primary school there, so an elementary school. And then I also redeveloped some of this area right here. I've yet to add the commercial in here just because of the issue with the lodging that I spoke about. And then also I added in some additional farmland over here to make up for the farmland that we took out, as well as to increase the total production as our city increases in size. I want to thank anyone who has made it this far in the video, and really if you've watched the videos at all, a special thanks to those who have been commenting and leaving some feedback. It's really helpful and it's also been driving a lot of the ideas I've had lately, so I'll try to incorporate as much of that as I possibly can. But that will do it for now, and I will see you in the next one.